Hi, today is January 27th, Saturday, and I am coming to you from my bed after what I'm going to call level 10 exposure to electromagnetic radiation yesterday that threw me into an episode that is the worst that I've had so far. And you'll just have to excuse my appearance because I'm just very grateful to God that I'm alive and I survived it. Um, my plan was to move back to Pahrump, where I've lived for the last couple of years. But a job took me to Vegas, and I've been here in Vegas for since April of last year, 9 months or so. And since I've been in Vegas, I've had since July, I went down with fatigue, and in September, I was diagnosed with bradycardia, low heart rate, and it was down in the upper 30s, low 40s. November 29th, I had my first episode of becoming symptomatic to EMR. EMF. I'm going to call them EMR, EMF. So I became electromagnetic hypersensitive, EHS, from that day on. I've probably had about 70 episodes from low level to, I've had about 3, maybe 4 now, what I call level 10 exposures. And when I say level 10, each exposure ramps up. So my level 10 on my first one was probably a 6 at this point. Now my one yesterday would have been on that scale a 15, if that makes sense. But I actually took a load to the house yesterday. The last time I was there, I got sick by spending the night because the Wi-Fi was left on all night. And it hadn't bothered me the month and a half before when I was there, so didn't think anything of it. And it took me down. But I was able to leave there as sick as I was. I felt like a flu had hit me. A really, really hard, bad flu had hit me. And I was still able to run a couple of errands and get home. And yesterday, that was not even that was not even an option. I got there and I started cleaning my room, and I was going to sort through stuff that's been there for almost a year that I haven't used, and I figured why I don't need it now. So I started sorting and cleaning the room out, and I started feeling like my blood sugar was dropping. And I have a history of hypoglycemia, but I haven't had a hypoglycemic attack since I had my bariatric surgery May of 2017. So I thought it was kind of odd that I was feeling hypoglycemic. And so I ate, and usually before with hypoglycemia, as soon as I eat some protein, my blood sugar comes up and I feel better. And as long as I haven't let it go too low, I recover fine, no problem. Well, the whole time I was eating, I was not feeling any better. After I ate, I still wasn't feeling any better. I started, cleaning more and unloading and putting away. And as I was doing that, I started to feel weak and I started to feel fatigued, and I started getting lightheaded. And the lightheadedness and the confusion, dizziness, those 3 symptoms alerted me to past exposures. And, that's part of what I have felt. The hypoglycemic is not something I have felt in the past since November 29th. So once I started feeling those symptoms, I thought, oops, it sounds like and feels like, I'm being exposed to radiation and frequencies. So I took my little cell phone out and started going first in my bedroom, and I couldn't find anything that was triggering it. So I went into the living room and did the obvious, of course. There's tablets, Kindles, a laptop, and the TV. And of course, those, even off, are still emitting radiation. It's a high reading, but it's the low part of the high reading, which kind of blew me away because I have one cell phone that will emit radiation even when it's off. And it's the Samsung Edge. And all along the edge of it will emit radiation. The rest of it won't. This phone doesn't. When it's off, it's off. There's nothing coming off of it. So it didn't surprise me, but it was an alarm because we have talked, my roommates and I have talked about, unplugging the Wi-Fi, leaving it off. And, that the tablets and stuff shouldn't, be that big of a problem because I can tolerate my phone for a certain level of time and then that's it. But it's in front of me, if they have theirs, and I didn't think that it would be problematic. And then of course the TV, and they have a big screen TV. So of course it was emitting radiation even off. So I was already alarmed because I'm like, crap, this isn't going to work like we thought. We thought that all we would need to do was turn off the Wi-Fi and I would be able to come back home and not have any problems. So I realized that I had a problem. I went to the extra bedroom where there's a treadmill and immediately started scanning on the display, because that was my thought, was that the display is going to be where if there's any radiation, it's going to come off of there. And to my dismay and shock, it was actually off the handles where your hands hold on and the machine is reading what your body is doing and showing it on the display. That's where the radiation was coming, and it was high. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe this. I was blown away. So I went into the kitchen because just last week they got new used appliances, a refrigerator, a dishwasher, and I think it was just the refrigerator. I'm sorry, my brain is real slow today. Refrigerator, her stove, I believe, was the same, and the dishwasher. So immediately those items were, all three of them were emitting high levels of radiation. And then I went into a mini panic of, oh my God, this is the source right here, because that was the difference between the week before or 2 weeks that I was there, that I was exposed all night long just to the Wi-Fi and was sick. But this thing was moving really fast and I was getting sicker and sicker by the moment. And I realized that I had to get out of there. So, well, part of my brain was still saying, well, okay, I need to put things away before I leave. And then it's like my brain became scrambled. It was like my thoughts weren't together. And so I was trying to think, what do I need to do? I need to get out of here, but I can't put things away because why am I going to put things away if I'm not going to be able to live here, because they just got these new appliances, and between that and the treadmill and all the Kindles and the TVs, I can't stay here. I can't live here. So then it became a minor panic of I gotta get it cleaned up. I gotta get stuff cleaned up. I gotta get out of here. And as I'm saying that, I'm literally feeling like this flu has hit me. This bad flu has hit me. And then along with that was the fractured thoughts and weakness and fatigue and brain just feeling very scrambled, confusion, dizzy, lightheadedness. So I'm running around trying to remember what I opened and what I need to lock back up and what I took out, because I had created a big mess. I was reorganizing, I was cleaning before I brought in my stuff, and yet I'm still trying to think things through, that I need empty bins and boxes to bring back here so that I can pack up what I have here. Where I was going to put it, I couldn't even get that far. I couldn't even think that far. And it was just a sense of panic because I needed to still drive 45 miles. And I know how this thing works. It's levels. It's like you climb this symptoms that just, as long as you're in where the source of the frequency and radiation is, your symptoms are climbing in intensity. And then it gets to a point where you get away from it and it levels off. And then it starts this whole decline of, as I move away from it, of other symptoms. So I knew what was going to happen. I knew that I needed to get away from there ASAP because I still had to make this drive. And I couldn't stay anymore because I knew the longer that I stayed, the worse it was going to be. But I almost had to get away from it to try to get leveled out a little bit before I was going to be able to drive, because then I started with the heart palpitations. I started with my throat closing. I started getting short of breath. And so I scrambled to get everything put away and then get out of there and remember to set the alarm and lock the doors and make sure the dogs are inside and make sure I have my dog. And I mean, it's horrifying when your ability to think and process your thoughts are gone. And that's what this does to me, and reportedly to other people. So I ended up getting the dogs inside and everything locked up and alarm set, and got out in the car and just cried. I just cried because I just could not believe what was happening to my body and to my brain, and had to notify my girls that I was sick, and sick at the source of where I'm supposed to be moving to. Or back to, that I originally had no problems with, and now all of a sudden I can't be in the house without being majorly zapped. So I was crying and scared and praying, and I just couldn't get away from there fast enough. Even sitting out in the driveway, even though the intensity started to go down, I knew that I was still pretty close to the source and sources. There were several sources, and that I needed to move away from it, and that the further I got away, the better it would be. And my girls were like, well, Mom, don't drive yet, wait. And I'm like, the best way that I could explain it, analogy that I could use is that when you're stabbed with a knife and it's in a bleeding area, that that if you leave it there, you could die from infection and become septic. And, I know sitting there is not going to do me any good, but the alternative is to pull that knife out and bleed all over myself. But I had to take that risk because sitting there was just going to make it worse. And then I still had to make this drive. And so I just had to pull the knife out and take that risk because I just couldn't deal with the alternative. So I took off and just went slow, and the further I got away from it, the lesser the intensity, but I could feel the after effects hit on. And it's kind of like, I can compare it to, and I do and have compared it to, like, being drunk. It's like when you're drunk, really drunk, um and your body is going through things, you're doing things, your brain is kind of scrambled, you're feeling those feelings, and then you get so drunk that you don't remember what you did. You don't remember what happened. So the next day you got to kind of go back and ask people, what happened last night. That's the feeling I get the day after. It's like when it's happening, it's a blur. Um, it's real vague. I mean, I've driven home and ran a couple errands and don't remember. It's like real a blur. It's just like a blur of what I did, and that becomes scary because you're functioning in a way that you won't remember the next day. Like I remember talking to my roommate on the phone, but I have no clue what we said. I have no clue what we talked about, and I know we talked, and I know we talked because it's on my phone, but it's like a dream. It was like a nightmare. The whole day is like a nightmare now. Um, and I'm trying to put the pieces together of what exactly happened. So I I noticed while I was driving home, because I kept doing Marco Polo's videos to my kids and to my best friend, to let them know I was climbing the mountain, I was over the mountain, and then I was home. And I've gone back and watched those videos, and it's very hard to watch because I definitely had cognitive impairment and I had speech impairment. I actually sounded like somebody that was having a stroke. I really, really struggled for words. My words were slurred, were impeded. I could see the struggle that I was having to try to get the words out. If I could grasp the word to try to get it out, was like it took every ounce of my being to try to talk like that. And I recommend anybody that goes through this to document. I have written down dates and symptoms and what the source of exposure was. I literally, since November 29th, I can say I've probably had 70, if not more, episodes. And my doctor, primary doctor, has admitted that I know more about this than she does. That EHS is too new. They don't even have a diagnosis code except for research available. That it's recognized by the World Health Organization, but it's very downplayed as far as the effects and effects on people. 3G, 4G, 5G was never tested on humans to see what, or living things. Birds are dying, bees are dying. There's frequencies all over surrounding us. And everybody's tolerance is different. So I obviously, November 29th, reached my tolerance level, and now I've become symptomatic. I feel like a walking radar detector, that the minute that I'm in an environment where there's radiation, my body feels it and reacts to it and just can't tolerate it. So on my drive home, I had to go over a mountain that they're doing road construction, and it was very, very scary because my brain had to figure out the lane changes and the speeds. It was like way more than my brain could handle, all the things that you have to do when you're driving. It was very scary, and all I could do was pray that the Lord just would guide me through it. And thank goodness I had a car in front of me, so I just basically followed that car, and if he went off into a ditch, I was going to go off into a ditch, simply because my brain was just struggling to think about all these things outside of myself that were going on. It definitely makes you feel and understand what Alzheimer's people go through that suffer with that. So I'm going to go to part two.